Let's see here. Section 3.4. Let's go to that. Find out what page we're on.
That'd be page 15.
This is simple, I believe. I don't think this will be a big issue. This is actually helping the property owners in Douglas County. It's under, let's go down towards the last sentence. Starts off the applicant. You all see it 3 lines up from the bottom under 3.4A.
Yes, the applicant is advised to.
Right there. We're going to, FEMA suggested the applicant must apply for letter of map amendment. That would be crazy not to. If you
Must be
know you're in a floodplain, FEMA says get your loan. That way you don't have to carry that insurance. Yeah, there is a 1% chance that your bank will require you, but most likely it does.
Well,
That's saying you must get your loan if you find out you're out of the floodplain.
But this,
Which is free through FEMA.
so you're essentially saying rather than advising them, they shall.
Yes.
Okay, and I'll just point out, this is one of the problems from the original ordinance, that there were a lot of these sections that advised us of things rather than telling us you shall or you must. And that's helpful because that needs to be done. I mean, advising someone that, well, you should take an elevation now before you build your building because this is the perfect time to check this out. Well, why wouldn't you say you shall take an elevation before you build the damn building? You know, so that's helpful. I like that.
I'll give you a quick example. I know we've been here a long time. Canal City in Charleston, West Virginia, they go in and get an elevation certificate before they start building a house right there on the Canal River. And this is right on Canal Avenue, 2500 block, really nice homes. I'm talking 500,000 $1 million homes. And, you know, he built it, he got his elevation certificate, showed he's out of floodplain. Well, he thinks, well, I don't have to carry flood insurance. Then he built his house. It was a pre-construction. Floodplain manager called him, hey, you ought to go ahead and get a loan, but he didn't tell him he had to. He messed up. Well, the person put a basement in, and now he has to carry flood insurance because the lowest floor is actually in the flood. If he'd have just told him to go get his loan, he wouldn't have had to do this. So it's protecting you. It saves you all money. To me, it's a no-brainer, right?
So, Kevin, just so I'm clear, so you're saying that it should read, the applicant shall apply?
Correct. Yes, that is correct.
Okay, that's easy.
Section 7.2. 7.2B.
2B.
Okay, that's page 34.
33.
7.2B.
Actually, page 33.
Okay, I apologize.
You might be in 34, I don't know.
Well, no, it's probably on 30. It's probably on 33.
And we'll quote. This is from Maury. Is this the only place where the ordinances discusses other required permits? I don't know. I don't like how it allows the floodplain permit to be issued, but no work started until other needs obtained. Permits are obtained. Specifically says all other permits must be obtained first. That's what it should say. Under section 60.32 of the Code of Federal Regulations, it specifically says all other permits must be obtained first. And if you look
Can you give me that site again? CFR
60.3 and number 2.
And a number 2?
60.32.
Okay. And it says
all other permits must be obtained first. Hold on here.
Where's it in our order?
What page? You were right, Dave. I'm sorry. To begin with, under page 34. We're on page 34, section E. She actually made a mistake here, I believe.
7.2E.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. 7.2E, page 34. If you read down there, let's see what it says. It says any permit required of any governmental agencies, whether federal or state or local, that requires site approval shall be filed with the county clerk, date, time, stamped, and filed in the official permit application file. Then it says following issuance of the said permit and prior to the start of construction. Instead of saying following issuance, it should say prior to issuance. In other words, it's saying you need to do this, you need to get the state and the other permits before it can be issued.
I'm sorry, you need to locate us again. Where?
I'm very sorry, page 34, and look under E, is an echo.
Doesn't the DEP require them to have their floodplain permit before they issue the permit for the?
No, they don't.
No.
Wait, let me clarify that. The reason, and I'll take credit for that comment, the reason we suggested that, just so everyone knows, is there are instances where we cannot get a permit for some other things, potentially without getting a floodplain permit. The DEP does not require it. The DEP requires you to consult with other governing bodies to see what else is available. The issue that we specifically have on that issue is this, and I think I have a potential suggestion to craft it. We can take out some of the additional language that it can't be issued necessarily, maybe. We can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars.
You already do.
Which would be wasted if we don't know that we can drill in a floodplain in Dodge County. Now, I know some people, because the comments are coming out of their mouths now, with all due respect, can say, well, we have plenty of money. But that's not practical. It's not practical for my client, EQT, to spend the money on the floodplain study. We're going to do that anyway. But to spend permitting, engineering studies, and everything else, environmental studies, for DEP, if we're not going to get a floodplain permit.
Then to me, that's why the language needs to be concise, so you know not to bother trying. If it's not going to be true.
No, but you're reading it backwards.
But let me ask you a question. About Mammoth's engineering.
Look, we're here to talk about. I'm here to talk about. Let me finish.
Okay.
We're here to talk tonight about the proposed floodplain ordinance. We're not here to debate.
But my point is, if the floodplain spells out in enough details, then you'll know not to bother spending $100,000 to try to get something that you know you're not going to get.
You're misunderstanding what I'm saying. What I'm saying is this. Let's take two easy permits that everybody can understand. The floodplain permit, drilling permit from the DEP.
Right, which doesn't require anything. They don't even look to see if you've gotten your floodplain.
Well, now...
You're not required to, James Martin told me that.
I didn't say they're required, but it is a suggestion. In the particular, if we want to go down the road of a particular case, they did respond to Joy Huff and said they consulted, that we consulted with the county on that
And James
issue.
Martin told me that we don't even need to know whether they got a floodplain permit from Dodger. We give them the permit anyway. We don't need to know that.
Okay, I'm just telling you what's on the application forms and the permits. It's on there. It's plain language. Check with all these other. It's not just county. It's Army Corps of Engineers. It's a bunch of other things. It's in there that we have to consult with. But before we spend additional monies and paying permit fees at the DEP, we would want to know if we could drill in Dodger on this particular location.
It's the cost of doing business. You have to do
Well,
certain things as a contractor.
It's easy to sit here and say that.
Sure.
But
I do an architect before I build a house and see if it's going to work.
But let's take that argument further. We would, if we hired an engineer who said we were okay in the floodplain
Hopefully
to drill.
it's licensed in the state.
Well, our engineer is licensed in the state, and the guy who stamped it. We don't need to continue again. With all due respect, that's not productive for tonight.
Yeah, but I'm just saying.
Okay, then again, it's not productive for tonight.
Well, we're trying to avoid these things.
It doesn't help anybody, particularly in the oil and gas industry. The same would be the same if someone wanted to open a mine. We're opening a cracker plant, $1 billion facility in Dodge County or somewhere else if this ordinance goes through. To know that you can do it there. I mean, it just doesn't make sense.
You have to have, and this is throughout the state, you have to have all other necessary governmental permits before you get your floodplain permit. You got to produce those.
Which is why I would submit that there needs to be a provision in for conditional approval. It doesn't have to be a final permit. The language does kind of qualify it. There needs to be some assurance on the part of the applicant, whether it's a gas industry, coal industry, or someone else, that they're going to, that at least on the floodplain administrator level, some kind of conditional approval of that.
And what happens if they look at it though, and then they decide not to approve it?
I'm sorry?
I said, what happens though, so you're saying that you want to know that you can spend all this money for your studies and then apply it, because you'll get a conditional approval, so you'll go ahead and spend the money. Well, then what are you going to do if the...
Again, you're misunderstanding.
Okay, it says that, well, I looked at it now, you had conditional approval, but now that I look at everything, now you're not going to get it. What are you gonna do
Again,
now?
let me explain again. Let me explain again. You're misunderstanding what I'm saying.
No.
We're spending the money on the floodplain study.
Mhm.
That part is paid for first under my
And you
scenario.
have to, that's just the way it is.
I'd like to hear him make it all the way through.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm not arguing with it. What I'm trying to say is, we spend the money, pick a number, it doesn't matter, $3. We know so much more than that, let's pick $3 for easy
Take
discussion.
300,000.
Whatever the number is, $300,000 to do a floodplain study and do all the, to get a floodplain permit. And let's say the permitting process of DP costs $1 million. Just pick a number, it could be, who knows? That number doesn't need to be, shouldn't be incurred. The $1 million shouldn't be incurred until we know that the $300,000 got a floodplain permit. If we spend $300,000 on a floodplain permit and we don't get it, that is the cost of doing business. I agree with you. That part I don't have a problem with. The part I have a problem with is we spend the $300,000. We need to know whether the answer is going to be yes or no. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that permit's going to be issued, but it can be conditional, subject to getting the other permits, which is kind of the way the language reads, getting the other permits that are required. You bring that back to Dan Wellings, and Dan Wellings said, okay, these are the 3 permits you need. Maybe it's, or 2 permits you need. Maybe it was a DEP permit, an Army Corps of Engineer permit. We get those 2, we give them to Dan Wellings, and then he issues the permit. And then you go, pardon me?
And then you go to the DEP.
No, we would have, because we know we were going to get a conditional approval, we could use that and rely upon that to go to DEP and spend however much money it takes to get a drilling permit. Otherwise, it's just a waste of resources and time if Dan Wellings or whoever the administrators say no. So we need some assurance that we're going to get it. Or, quite frankly, if we don't get the floodplain permit, the drilling permit means nothing.
I understand you completely. Basically,
Well, I understand what he's saying. I'm not sure I understand what you said to begin with. I lost it.
basically what I said is there's FEMA says that he has to get all other governmental permits before he even applies for it, before he gets his floodplain permit.
Before we get it, not apply.
Before they get it.
Now,
Before they get it.
governmental, do you mean DEP also?
Yes. Yes, any governmental, yes, DEP, Corps of Engineers, whoever you have to get your permits through. And I understand where he's coming from. If you go buy a house, you don't want to pay an appraisal fee for that house before you know for sure. Let's say you pay that appraisal fee and it comes back and your credits come back, like mine probably would. And your credit comes back and says you can't get this house, sorry. You already spent $1,500 getting an appraisal.
So you're saying that you're allowed to get the mortgage before you've done all your appraisals and all your job verification and everything else. That's what you're saying.
They kind of give you a pre-approval, and that's kind of what he's asked for, and I can understand where he's coming from.
Oh, I
don't
agree
want to spend money on
but
something
he's
that I'm
saying
not
that
sure
we
we'll
don't
get
want to
my
spend all this
product.
money to get this.
And that's
No,
what,
let me clarify. Let me say something. That is where you're wrong. Because I said, in my scenario, we're willing to pay the money to get the pre-approval
Okay.
of the floodplain permit.
So then what do you...
You're arguing with me.
Okay.
That's the problem.
Okay.
We're on the same page. But Mr. Foster and I can agree something, perhaps Diane, right? Mrs.
Yeah,
Pickup?
but I'm saying...
Perhaps you and I can agree on something like we can make this go smoothly.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm just saying that you have to spend money to make money.
We're-
You're not going to be able to go in and say...
And I'm saying that. I am saying that. I'm saying we're spending the money to get the pre-approval. That's not an issue.
so you're objecting to this phrase in here where it says he can get sort of a temporary permit as long as he agrees not to begin any work until he gets all the other final permits. That's what you're objecting to?
He has to have the other permits before he can receive his floodplain permit.
We can crack the language there.
Well, receive is a different, receive is, there could be a process that you have petitioned and there has been a ruling by the floodplain administrator that this is conditionally granted. You're not going to receive it, but you're conditionally granted it, subject to bringing these other permits back to me.
Exactly. That
And
would be fine.
but I thought that's what this
That is what,
said.
I agree with this stuff. That's what
I think that's what that says.
We can reword it.
Following issuance, and they said prior to issuance.
We can crack the language, make that a little more clear, Don. I think that's not a problem.
Could I ask a question? Where does the county stand in legal liability if they hand a permit and then everything goes south. You've paid your fees, okay? You have this conditional thing that says that it's okay. If the DEP says that it's okay, and the Army Corps of Engineers and and they say it's not okay.
Who's they? The county commission?
No, the other permits.
Well, then we can't get it. Then we can't do it.
There's no legal liability.
But there would be no legal liability
The
whatsoever.
DEP says no, but that's the DEP's decision.
And you're not going to drag them in on it.
I'm not saying what the DEP is or isn't going to do. I'm just saying, if you want to ask the question without getting
That's
legal advice,
exactly.
if the DEP says we have to get all these permits, whether it be a floodplain permit, Army Corps of Engineering permit, DEP permit, potentially for any given site. If we don't get all those permits, we can't drill. So, I mean, what are we going to, we might fight either the body that denies the permit, we might appeal the decision of the DEP or the Army Corps of Engineers, County Commission, we've been down that road. So, I mean, that, we're going to exercise rights, but it's not contingent on one or the other. It's just, it would be contingent on, we can get started, we would know we've got permit. And I think that there's...
I have an issue also, because I think there's some federal law that may contradict this. We get a FERC certificate granted to us by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. We cannot get a FERC certificate until we're granted all state and local permits. So what you're saying here is we'll never get a federal permit for doing work because we can't get a floodplain permit. They will not grant us a FERC certificate and permit unless we have all permits granted. Now, I don't understand the language here. If you have one federal body telling you to do one thing, you have another federal body that's contrary to what another federal body is, there seems to be an issue here.
I can tell you right now, the DEP, the Corps of Engineers is not going to say you need to get a floodplain permit first. We're saying you need to get state
We're not
permits
dealing
first
with
before we can give you a floodplain
We're
permit.
dealing with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. It's a federal
Well,
body.
this gentleman's dealing with the Army Corps. of
Okay, but this is my issue.
Okay.
I'm not-
Okay.
I think the answer is, here's Mr. Manchin's address.
Well,
I think it's a
but
congressional
what you're
issue.
doing is you're creating an ordinance that is in contrast to a pre-existing federal law.
Well, we could accept federal law out. There's an existing federal law which says that the opposite of that. Would that take care of that?
Yeah, we can't build until we get a federal FERC permit. So we're not going to build even if we get the floodplain permit. We can't build it until we get our federal permit. The last thing in the food chain for us is that federal permit, after hoops and hurdles that are beyond anybody's imagination.
And to echo that, there may be other industries, because it's most likely going to affect industry in this scenario as opposed to just a surface area. I don't do coal work. There may be coal issues like that. There may be other issues like that where there's a federal rule, which federal law controls. I don't know if anybody in this room, with all due respect to you, Kevin, has looked into when FEMA controls as opposed to FERC.
Actually, this is all the county. I mean, this is all every county. The state empowered, federal government empowered the state to let the counties and govern their own floodplains. 8.8-1-3 and 7-1-3B.
Well, and I'm okay with that. But my concern is, what Bob is saying is, okay, the federal government says, yeah, you can do that. You have to do it to get flood insurance and protection of natural disaster. Okay, that's fine. And then FEMA says, then you also have to get all other permits before you get a floodplain permit. But then the federal government, let's take it out. FEMA's not saying that. Congress is saying you have to get that. And then Congress is then saying you have to, basically the federal government is saying you have to get a FERC permit. So I don't think, we don't know the answer to that. And so we either need to make an exception and send it back to FEMA that accepts out FERC specifically for our group.
I'm not familiar with the
FERC is Federal Energy Regulation.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that at all.
For
But
interstate
if that be the case, all the
transportation
times
of
that
gas.
they dredged the pipelines and stuff and didn't obtain a permit,
Yeah, not all
Not
pipelines
all
are regulated by
if
FERC.
they're in the floodplain, they should be. They are.
No, not by FERC. Not all pipelines are
Okay,
regulated.
like I said, I'm not familiar.
Yeah, there's a difference, which we all play with every day, which pipelines are jurisdictional lines and non-jurisdictional lines.
Okay.
But I do think, we can think about that. We can either look into it or make exceptions. I mean, I think the first part of the issue, we can work out the contingent deal. I think everybody's kind of on page with that. But the second one, either we can either look into it more, Bob will look into it more, or you can ask FEMA, says, well, what about a FERC that says all the permits are required?
Basically, if they, just go by the Code of Federal Regulations,
I know, but both of the FERC stuff is also the CFR, just a different section.
different section.
So which one, I mean, they both say the opposite. I mean, that's the problem.
Somebody has to bring it up to them and let them change it.
Go ahead.
We're gonna go by this one, because this
Go
is like that.
Assuming these three minds work out this wording about whether they can have a temporary
Contingent, let's talk contingent.
contingent
Conditional.
approval or whatever. Would anybody object to adding a sentence to this paragraph that says the oil company goes to the Army Corps of Engineers for a review, and the Army Corps says you don't need a permit from us?
Well, no,
Would it be all right to request that you give the administrator some sort of a letter of affidavit saying, okay, we had it reviewed, we don't need a permit?
Now, that's the same, personally, that's the same issue as saying you can't regulate south of floodplain. You're now asking us to go prove a negative, go get documents from every other regulatory body in the world.
Well, we assume you're going to ask them.
Well, I can tell you this, with respect to EQT, you can assume we're going to apply for all the permits necessary to drill. And I think that all responsible companies
And
want
so
to do that.
if they tell you that it isn't necessary, couldn't we just have a letter saying that?
What I'm trying to say is, we may not have to apply for one because we will do a study to determine whether we need an Army Corps of Engineers permit. The DEP is not going to grant it unless we've done I think it's Army Corps of Engineers.